And now we're going to have Paula Aregoi from Beltran Statistics, who Paula Aregoi is an engineer from field engineer. He's in the Eurocop chair. And the title of this is...
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank you for the introduction and for allowing us to present our work related to statistics and the geographical information systems. And also, Raquel wanted to come, but due to unforeseen circumstances, she was not able to come and be here today. The package Pred Crime, in which Pau and Manoli are working now, is an example of synergy between statistics and the geographical information system, what we want to do, that merge because in the thesis project, we are analyzing the calls of local police to Castellón, and we are trying to find patterns and how are they distributed. Then we saw that we needed a tool in order to localize in space and time all those calls, together with different facts that took place. Then finally, we were able to build a module, and the main driver is the statistic model. Pred Crime is going to analyze different things. We are going to analyze both the feelings that people have when they call local police, because that shows what happens if they are afraid, whatever. And after, we're going to describe and even predict with some margin of error the future calls. What do we have here? On the one hand, we have calls. This can be calls. This can be crimes. It can be anything which is located in space and time. On the one hand, we have this database with all the calls. Then we have a catalog of facts of the company. And then we have information regarding the coordinates. This information can, for instance, tell us whether this is close to a school or to a park or whatever. What can we obtain with the process, the space and time process? On the one hand, we will know which are the variables that explain and that those calls take place in that specific locations, and then how are they distributed. So we will be able to know, I mean, from the statistic point of view, where the possible calls or crimes may take place in the future. We are going to detect clusters, that means areas in which it is possible to know that there is a large number of calls and why. And we will be able to build some probability mapping. This will be a kind of risk mapping. In those areas is more, we have more possibilities to receive calls. But we will have to see which are our assumptions. Our assumptions are that this is a process of space and time points. We need x, y coordinates, which are the space coordinates, and time coordinate. So let's think that we have a cylinder, and each instant in time is a layer, and we are seeing the different maps within that cylinder, and we want to know which is the distribution of this, whether this follows a pattern, whether there is no pattern. And it is very important to consider what we call the intensity of first order. And intensity of first order tells me how is this blanket, this surface, which is inside that cylinder, and which is producing the different points. In order to understand what is a point process, they can be classified according to the intensity. The first type, which is regular, which is not random. Another process of points, which is clustered, where we have different areas where we from which we receive more data. And then we have a randomized process, which is the independent one. If we are studying a process which is absolutely randomized, then there is nothing we can do. The model allows us to make the difference between the different situations in which we can be. For a study area that we are studying in Castellón, these are the calls from the people in the city of Castellón, in a limited area of Castellón. This is an empirical process, and the other that we have on the right-hand side, which is simulated and non-homogeneous, and the points are randomly assigned. And we want to make the difference between both in order to be able to make an estimate. In order to explain a point process, the idea is, let's imagine Valencia, and we divide this into different areas, for instance, whether in districts, streets, blocks, whatever. So we model the intensity of first degree, of first order. This variable is going to tell me the number of calls or crimes that are going to take place, or which take place in region Y in instant T. This is what I want to say. So then we use the first order intensity, and this is going to tell me this risk map. And we're going to generalize the assumptions. The first order intensity, which is in terms of space and time, we divide it into two parts. One part, which is deterministic, which is xt, and the other part, which is randomized, because any social event has a random part. At the same time, what we do is the deterministic part, which is the result of the data, is also made up by two elements. A part that studies the time element of the process, and the other one, which is the spatial element, and allows us to study this as if time couldn't have any impact on it. We can do regressions for each one of the areas, and we can apply models, mathematical models, allowing us for each of the areas or the sections to predict based on the different covariables, which is all the information that we were inputting to the model, how many data are we going to have. With this, we can get something similar to this. On the left-hand side, we have the real data, and on the right-hand side, we have the areas in which using real data is more feasible that either calls or crimes take place. We do that also with the time every day, and the variable to be explained is the number of calls per day, and the rest of variables have to be explained. And we obtain something similar to this. Both together allow us to obtain the first order intensity. We are still studying the descriptive one, which is based on real data. Then we have the other part, which is the stochastic part, and we assume this is a Gaussian process, although it's somewhat more complex, but we consider that follows the Gaussian laws, and we consider it is stationary, and we want to explain the relationship that is going to take place between time and space. So we in the first part, in the deterministic part, we do not take that into account. In this second part is where we have to take those elements into account. And finally, when we have the space and time region, then we want to find out how is the number of calls distributed according to this model. This is a model, a Poisson model, counting the dots, the points, and the intensity value is the average value of expected calls in that area. So if we have the model, we'll be able to know how is distributed, how the number of calls is distributed. We will also know which is the structure of the covariant, which can be calculated, and there is a model of hierarchical structure. And with the information obtained based on the data, then we adjust the model for the data observed. And this is what my colleagues are trying to develop within the module that now Pau is going to present. ¿Quieres que siga yo, que esto es estadística hiperprecisa?
Pues todo esto que ha explicado Modest.
This that has been explained by Modest is translated into what you are going to see in this video. This is a plugin which has been developed based on the needs of a company that process police data, which is called Eurocop, and they had a need to analyze the data they were having within an spatial concept, and they wanted to use gvSIG for this.
What the plugin does is load the initial data using SAP. It loads the work environment, and it also loads temporal data. It selects data which we're going to analyze within the gvSIG, and then it loads a model, parametric model, which is going to be used for non-parametric models, but it's not been developed. There is a non-parametric model, but it's not been developed yet. So it was executed. All the calculations we need to be done are done by Modest, which Modest has explained. And finally, what we managed to get is the graphs like this, which you've already seen before, and then these data can be used to load in gvSIG, and from there we can then start doing different analysis using the different tools which gvSIG has. The idea is also to be able to generate automatic reports because of the needs of the company, because of the company's needs, and basically this really is this is what we've got developed, in a plugin for plugins. As the model itself starts to develop and starts to grow, and we get new needs that come out, then this plugin will incorporate any innovative things. One of the things also which are outside of the gvSIG were connections with other modules which are being used by the Eurocop company. Right, so this is because this is the gvSIG app are applied to criminology. What's happened with criminology? It's one of the latest incorporations, let's say, into the world of SIG, but also they've been using geographic informations. But recently, it's been when there's been more interest in SIG and the SIG tools. Why? Why have they been interested in this? Because they're studying factors, individual factors, social, contextual, environmental factors, which can be looked at using a SIG tool, which is called environmental criminology. So it talks about what's happening in a particular place, using its context and what is the setting itself. So what do we take into account? Well, we take into account there are places which attract and repel crime. We're talking about in civic actions. It doesn't really depend. It's not random. It depends on the time, the climatology, the place, the station of the year. And there might be more things happening. There may be less things happening. There may be more violence. There may be less violence, depending on this. And the aim, therefore, of analysis to analyze the places and the environmental elements. Therefore, we need a tool like gvSIG. As we've already explained, is what was happening in the past. We used the typical map. We were stuck in the drawing pins, and we drew up different points where there was an accumulation. But more recently, we've got police who, in this case, both nationally and European and internationally, who have got bodies which are specialised in environmental analysis. So what are the advantages are? Well, we improve a little bit the analysis of in civic acts because we have data of the place, the type, the day. It's more visual and descriptive, as we have seen before in the speech about archaeology. We can actually visualise the things which are happening in a graphic way. And at first sight, we can see if there's anything which looks strange. And after this, we could use gvSIG for a process which are being incorporated to do preventive plans, for example, as we've seen with the tool, restructuring people's timetables, working timetables, for patrols, for beats, the police beats. And we can also use it in cases for criminals who have done repetitive crimes in particular areas and within a particular context. This is one of the uses that we are having here. We are counting the number of calls which we have in Castellón city, depending on the census areas. And this is a project which is within in the Eurocop project, the Eurocop chair, which dedicates managing databases for the police databases. Within this project, we also got participation by the local police from Castellón itself. I think so. That's everything. So thanks very much for allowing us to present our project. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Paolo Modest. Now we're going to pass the chair. We're going to have a look at the questions now, not only from this last speech, but from the 4 speeches which have made up this session. And if there aren't any questions, no problem. But I'll just throw out a question here, I think. For example, in archaeology, both for Alexis and what tools do you think are not used properly for gvSIG, which could be useful for archaeology in the future, but not presently being used? Well, now that we've differentiated the speech a bit between spatial things, I would look at excavation. It would be useful to be able to have the Z coordinates and to find out the depths of the layer shape, because this would allow us to visualize much better this stratigraphy. This would be one of the advantages which we really need actually within landscape archaeology. Well, it's better if you explain this, I think. When we're talking about landscaping, more than lacks from the IT system, geographic system, what we're really lacking is accessibility to the layers, to the orthophoto maps, because what I studied in Mexico, very often I had this problem, especially as I'm working now in Spain. It's sometimes impossible to get images which are useful half decent, shall we say. But I'd like to reiterate that from a point of view of archaeology, the lack we've got here, for me, the need we have in GIS is that it provides everything that I need to be able to carry out the work I want to do. Okay, any other questions or? I'd also like to ask about Power Modest. What if you said in the study cases, are we applying in Castellón? I'd like to know have you taken to practice? Have you actually got police officers out there where there have been particular problems, and are you actually analysing now the improvements in criminality or in criminal cases or well, I mean that's it. No, at present, no, we're not applying it because the model needs more and work for adapting the data and to fine-tune things, shall we say. So practically, it's not being implemented into what we could call it's not being implemented totally by the police yet. Do you know if we're contemplating the fact that are the architectonic, archaeological factors which influence here, or do you need other type of information which could help to do preventive action, but not from a police point of view, but from a point of view of planning around the setting itself? Well, first of all, what we wanted to create was, once we got the results, we'd look at the areas where these things are produced, where we get the information from, what the information does in different points, what different people do. We're analysing calls, for example. We get the feeling that something is happening in this area when somebody calls. So I think all this information we'll have to download all this information probably by the town halls, and I think after this we'll then be able to take decisions. If Raquel was here, she's a criminologist, she would have been able to explain a little bit better. She'll be able to transmit. I'm trying to make the little information I know. The idea basically is that it could offer, let's say, a clue for the criminologist analyst about what's happening and where it is happening. So we need field work. We need to go to these places where the alarms have gone off and take a look at the setting, the architecture, see whether it favours vandalism, for example, whether it's a rundown area, if there are many areas where you can easily get away from. So we use it both to change the way of police beating and paroling, and also if we need to act, for example, in an urban way, so that deficiencies in that area don't now exist. We need to, in other words, get rid of deficiencies and disadvantages in different areas. Has anybody got any other question here from the audience? Freddy? No? We're talking about crime prediction, the temporal variable and the geographic variable. Have you found any relation between them? Any relations which are more important, relations which are more important than others between these two things? No, well, first of all, no, we don't. In the descriptive model, what we're doing is, in the first part was to, in a certain way, divide it into two parts. So we're not saying one has got better weighting than the other one, but both complement the intensity. If we look at the amount or the degree of whether there is any relationship between the covariables. This is in the casuistic part, but we're doing that at the moment. That's what we're working on at present. Are there any other questions here from anybody? Right, well, if there isn't any other questions, I'm going to ask Andrea also, I think. ¿Tienes alguna traducción? ¿Tienes?
Quería preguntar.
I wanted to ask if which version have you developed for the integration? Is it for 0.3 SIG?
The 2.2, but I'm really hoping to do the jump on Friday during the code sprint with the help of some of the developers here around. So we're planning to release with the 2.3 together.
¿Y lo habéis presentado?
You presented it in any forums anyway? Because I think that it's a set of tools which is extremely potential and are going to have a great, a very large development within the free community. I believe there is, in time, it's preliminary development, if I'm not mistaken. You haven't really seen the answer, have you? The response from the public and the possible users. You've not reached this point yet, have you? If I'm not mistaken.
Inside gvSIG, not definitely. It's in testing phase. It's working quite well because the library is already very mature. But it's nice to have it with interaction inside gvSIG. But we'll reach out for the community to also do some testing and have some fun with it. Thank you.
Bueno, pues.
Right. Well, I don't know if there's any other question, and if not, I think what we can do is we can finalise this session. And many thanks to the audience and thanks to the speakers. Thank you.